Welcome back to the podcast. And today's guest is Gene, where we're going to be talking many things. We're going to be talking about all the things he's up to and all the things he's worked through and what he's doing now to inspire others in the world. So, just a quick introduction to Gene, and I'm going to dive in. So, despite being labelled learning disabled, Gene was able to turn his disabilities into his abilities. Not that it wasn't tough or a struggle, but from an early on, his parents were told they would be lucky if he was average. Gene went on to become a pilot and an author, a speaker of a multiple business owner, and a neuro encoder who considers himself now a performance specialist and helping people achieve their goals. So, welcome to the show today, Gene, and it's great to have you on. I'm glad we could make it happen. I know you're out there doing a lot of world, and I know kind of our schedules were a challenge to get together. But yeah, first of all, it'd be interesting, Gene, just to know a little bit about what kind of sparked that. I know we've spoken, but what sparked that transformation from maybe getting some of those labels early on to actually now you're out there really doing a lot of businesses and helping people. Yeah, what drives you to do all of that?
It's a great question, Johnny. And let me just say, I am really excited to be here today. You're right. It took a little doing, and I'm glad we were able to get on. Um, when I look back on some of the things that I had to overcome, it goes back to being in grade school. In seventh grade, I remember sitting outside the guidance counselor's office when my parents were in talking to him, and I heard him tell them, "You'll be lucky if this kid is average. Don't expect a whole lot out of him. The test scores don't lie. This is where he's at. These are the disabilities he has. He has ADD, dyslexia. He was a whole mess of words he used that I didn't know what probably three-quarters of them meant at the time. And we walked out, and my dad, I remember he reached out, he grabbed my hand, and he said, "Listen," he said, what do you want to be? What do you want to do here?" And I remember I remember the counselor telling him that I would be lucky to be average. And I said, I don't want to be average. I didn't
Mm.
want to be average. And he said, okay, then let's work at that. And so I was very fortunate that my father took an interest in teaching me life skills. I would just call them that. A lot of people kind of throw that by the wayside now because we don't have to fix our cars because there's mechanics or there's computers that tell us what's wrong with the car. Or we don't necessarily have to build because there's contractors that's what they do for a living. They've been doing it for years. They have big businesses. But my father took an interest in teaching me all those things to try to give me a skill set. And I think looking back on it now, he was actually looking for what skill set I had, not necessarily what he could teach me, but what I could cling on to that he could get and focus in on and give me a skill set to hopefully be successful. My mother taught me how to sew, how to wash clothes, how to cook. I was prepared to go into the world probably by the time I was about 14 years old. I knew how to work on cars, how to work construction, how to do electrical wiring. If my father didn't know about it, he would read about it at work on the weekends, and then he would go start trying to teach me this stuff that he had read about. We would learn about it together, but he made it fun. We would go change oil in the car, for example, but he would get underneath, show me how to take the plug out, show me where to put the oil pan, and then we would play catch or something and talk about things while we're waiting for the oil to drain. So it never seemed like work. He was kind of tricking me into figuring things out. And so it was funny when I got older because you start getting these questions of what do you want to do? If society starts pushing you into what do you want to do? And there was, in my world, no limits. Now, mind you, the label stuck with me all through high school, and I used them for a while, right? It was when I got a D or an F. Well, what do you expect? I'm learning disabled. It was too difficult. It was too hard.
Mm.
And I admittedly used it as a crutch when I was a kid. It was the easy way out, right? It was my easy button. Well, I'm learning disabled. I don't got to do this. So eventually when, push started coming to shove, I thought, well, I don't want to be average. And I was told, well, you could probably get a job. And it was pretty much working in an auto factory or doing something like that, which was just kind of, you get a good paying job. They'll pay you all right. You'll get healthcare benefits and these things. And And I thought, but I don't want to do that. And my father had told me, don't go do that. He worked in the auto industry. He was a supervisor for Ford Motor Company. And he told me, don't go do anything. Don't go do that. And mom and dad had taken me when I was 5 on a what's called a discovery flight. And so you go up in an airplane with a pilot. And I remember flying over my house and I thought, that's what I want. I want to go do that, is what I want to go do. I want to go do that. So unbeknownst to my parents, I went to the I went down to the recruiter's office where I went and I applied with the Army, took the test, passed the test, and then they found out I had ADD and I took Ritalin and told me it's a no-go. We can't have you out in the field requiring medication. I went to the Navy. I went to the Air Force. I mean, you name it, I went and applied, got rejected by all of them. And I thought, I don't get this. How am I being rejected? And in my mind, the way my brain had interpreted all the things my father taught me was that I can do anything. I can do all of these things. How are they telling me I can't go do this? And it created like a fire, like a drive in me. And I thought, no, I'm going to have to show these, but I can do anything I want to go do. And so I began to work at, I went ahead and because I couldn't get into the military, I went to college, like mom and dad said. Decided I was going to go to the University of Michigan and found out I was easily rejected by them because I didn't have a grade point average to get in. I said, there's got to be a way around. And on the back of the application, there was one line where they gave you to add comments. And so I wrote in there that please understand that having ADD, my entire high school career was a struggle, and I still made it out with a B average. I was a little better than average. I was a B student. And I promise if you give me a chance, I won't let you down. And they admitted me into the University of Michigan underneath some special program they were doing. My understanding is they don't even do that program anymore. It was like a 1 semester thing they tried out. I got into U of M and I made the dean's list. I graduated with honors from U of M. I have a degree in psychology. It was amazing that I'd made it in there. So I got out of school, and there's an implied promise here in the US that if you work hard, you go to school, get good grades, go to college, you'll get a good job. And I was promised, we're talking, this is back in the 90s when I got out of college, that I would have people knocking at my door for $35,000 to $45,000 a year, which was a lot of money walking right out of school. And nobody knocked at my door, Johnny. Nobody sent me a letter. Nobody sent me anything. There was email at the time. I got no emails. And I began to go apply for jobs. Mind you, I was working midnights making donuts. And I was making what I felt was very good money, more money than I ever made before any other job I had. And so the first offer I got was like $10.43 an hour to go be a social worker. And I said, well, that's not really what I wanted to do. And why would I take a job after going through college to make less money than what I'm currently making where I'm at? And so I had turned the job down, and I ended up, the epitome hit when I was told I was overqualified. Fresh out of college, I was overqualified to get a job as a therapist, working in like a boys rehabilitation type of thing. And I thought, yeah, this is obviously not going to work. So I set out to start looking into starting my own companies. And I started everything you can imagine, multi-level marketing. I tried all kind of things. I finally settled on doing quality control. I got really lucky. One of the gifts I got from my mom is she had an eye for detail. And I mean, when I say an eye for detail, if you hung a picture on a wall and then asked her to come over, she could look at it and go, that corner's an eighth of an inch lower than that corner. Oof. And you'd go measure it and it would be. I mean, she just could see things. I'm not that good, but I had an eye for detail. And so I got into quality control for the auto industries, which you're still working in the industry, but you kind of make your own schedule, but you don't. You don't have to be somewhere, but when somebody calls, you better show up. And you end up being kind of a traveling troubleshooter, where if things don't, they look great on paper when the engineers wrote them up. Once the parts produce, they get into the assembly. If they don't work, you kind of go in and start diagnosing why. Is it an assembly issue? Is it stackability? When we looked at how many millimeters we could be off from the mean, are we going both the same way and we're running into a problem? And so I was easily recognized there because I had this eye for quality. I was picking out problems that weren't even my problem and turning it into engineers and going, you guys might want to look at this. I noticed this. I was looking at this and noticed this. And I began to get in good with engineering and with the quality personnel. And then from there it was, Gene, why don't you start your own business? And I said, well, I kind of do. And they said, no, like you ought to train people and hire people to do, you're great at this. Why aren't you doing this? And I did that. I hired about, two people, asked them to come on board, trained them. And then I began to have a little more free time to go pursue other things. But I also in the process had helped so many of these engineers, they began to give my name to other people. So I had an unintended effect of, and when I say help, like if I had free time, I would help them rework parts in the plant. They would sit down to rework things and I would just help them because I had nothing better to do. And my coworkers would laugh at me. Well, you're not getting paid for that. Why are you doing that? Why are you? Well, some of these guys retired and went to other companies and then ended up giving me contracts to go work for these other companies because they knew I was still around. Well, that spread into, I have people now that work for me all throughout the auto industry, even into Tesla, Rivian, Stellantis, Ford, GM, you name it. I have people that work for me all over the place now doing quality work. And it was amazing to think that I almost committed to being a 9 to 5 type person and sitting in an office somewhere and really took hold of or committed to this idea that that was my payoff for all the going to school and getting good grades and doing that. Because I had the free time, I went back. I was at a family function for my wife. It was a reunion. Found out that one of her uncles was a pilot. And so I started talking to him and he said, well, go to your local airport. Somebody will take you up, go check it out. So I did. Found out that you don't have to go to the military. You could go to your airport and get trained. And so I did that. And from there, we ended up, I bought an airplane. I own an airplane now. And I found out that the local business was going up for sale that repaired aircraft. And I had an interest in it. And I thought, well, what better way to get your airplane repaired than if you own the business that repairs them? And so I looked into that. The price was right. And so I was able to make a deal to buy that company. So I purchased that company and we took that company from what was a small repair shop to being an award-winning Garmin dealership in the time that I've been there. But it was a boyhood dream, right? It was one of those things I had to put it on the shelf for a while, but I didn't stop chasing it. In fact, I found out, this is a great podcast to be on right now. I found out yesterday our sales rep from Garmin came to visit us because we moved about 2 months ago to an international airport. We're now at the Flint Bishop International Airport. And he comes in and he gives me this sad puppy dog look. And I said, well, I know it was tough. We moved, we did all these things, and I appreciate you guys working with us. And I said, it was amazing we could maintain our bronze dealership status. And he looks at me and he says, well, Gene, you're not bronze anymore. And I knew like we didn't work for like 2 months waiting for the FAA to give us our licensing back and all these things. And I said, well, I looked over at my avionics manager and I looked back at Jim and he's grinning and he says, no, you're a silver dealership now.
Well, that's coming.
And I said, holy cow. Now I wondered if we hadn't had to move and all these things where we have been. But the people that I don't know, I was blessed to have come in and out of my life. And the fact that I would keep taking chances on things because I just had this mindset that I can really do anything. I was able to do anything my father taught me how to do. And if I just keep learning, there's nothing I can't figure out. And it's really more about just being resourceful. I mean, that spun into, I ultimately started a flight school. We have a flight school there now where we train pilots. And we've had pilots go to FedEx, to UPS, to cargo companies, to Allegiant Airlines. We've sent people on. And it's exciting for me. It is extremely exciting to see these people, to be that in that area where I can be a stepping stone to help them go on and go be pilots and go do those things. Because I almost feel like I got robbed. I didn't know there was another way and I never investigated. And that's where a lot of us fall short. We kind of get told by somebody else, this is how life is, or this is the way things are. And we buy in and don't investigate it no more. We sell ourselves short.
Absolutely. Well, you've got a very inspirational story there and all the things in the world you've come from that decision of like, I don't want to be average, like being labeled early on and then like, I was going to be average at best. I don't want to be average, and then you've made that decision, you've made that commitment and you've changed it in your life. I want to touch a little bit on that, Gene, because I know certainly in my life, when I've had like challenges and speaking to people and previously coaching people, often we can get caught on like labels and certain like identities that don't always empower us, saying like, I'm broke could be one, or I'm someone who just is unhealthy, or I'm lazy, these things that might hold us back. So, from your experience of people giving you those or hearing those labels early on and then deciding, no, I'm not going to be average, no, I'm not going to be doing these things, how would you recommend someone goes about, beginning to break free of maybe a label or identity that's not serving them?
I think the biggest thing you have to do when you get a label placed on you, it's mental toughness. You have to stand guard at the gate of your mind of
Jim
how
Rohn.
you're going to let it affect you, right?
Mm,
How you're going to let it affect you. Because, at the end of the day, one of the most unique things about human beings is we have the ability to choose.
mm,
And when you look at that, so, as a kid, I was a chubby kid and I was fat, portly, husky was one of the worst things I hated hearing.
mm,
And then you figure out that, no, sometimes it's a little bit of part of life. And if you get a little more active, you can break out of that. The problem is that when you look in the mirror, if you don't have a strong mindset, you still see that portly person, that chubby person. Even though maybe you only weigh 140 pounds, in the mirror, you still see that person. And it's because of that label that was put on you that you bought into.
mm,
And we often get these labels from people that we believe are looking out for our best interest and they're trying to protect us and they love us and care about us. And so we buy into those things. And to get out of that cycle, the first thing you have to know is that somebody's opinion of you doesn't have to become your reality. That is their opinion. You can accept that or you can reject it, but you should always draw a line that they're entitled to their opinion and appreciate that that's how they feel. It's not who you are.
mm,
And so when you look at those things, like when I, looked at, I don't want to be average, I didn't want to be considered learning disabled. I discovered, when I was just telling my wife, I have, dyslexia, mild dyslexia, another label that I have. And I worked through that ultimately to author a book, which was extremely challenging to be able to do that. Thank God for, Microsoft Word and all these things we have now that are great tools. But to break out of that, I challenged myself. Okay, they said I'm dyslexic and I can't read or write very well, but I'm going to go read this book. And even if it was a 50-page book, what I knew going in was that it would be difficult. I mean, I've had situations where I've had to read a page 10 times for it to sink in what's there.
mm,
Then okay, great. Then just do it hard because the payoff you're going to get for it, the feeling of self-joy that you get because somebody said you couldn't do it and you did it. And then hopefully, my secret hope was some of these people were always still around and they had to scratch their heads and go, what were we thinking when we said this? How did we not see that this person had a lot more to offer? They didn't, yeah, they had these problems, but they certainly didn't let it hold them back. And if you let those labels hold you back, you're cheating nobody but you. You're
mm,
honestly buying into this collective consciousness that, well, yeah, because so and so said, or this counselor said, or this person told me. And the fact is, most people, when they give you those labels, they don't necessarily mean it to hurt you, but they're afraid on some level that you might go succeed.
mm,
And maybe it was something they wanted to go do and never took the chance. Or I've heard people say, well, Gene, you shouldn't go do that. I know a guy that did that, and this is how it turned out for him. Great. But that doesn't mean that's how it's going to turn out for me. We live in a different time now. I'm a different person. I just told somebody the other day, I said, no, we have unlimited potential. I call it my book, Exponential Potential, because we can go be and do anything we want to be if you decide to go do it. And everything in your life comes back to decision. Are you going to decide, commit to it, and go do it and be successful? People talk all the time about Murphy's Law, right? They tell you Murphy's Law, I think that goes something along the lines of Whatever can go wrong will go wrong at the most inopportune time. That's Murphy's Law. My mother had a wonderful refrigerator magnet that said, I don't know who Murphy was, but he should have been dragged out in the street and shot. And so I remember seeing that as a kid, but people don't talk about Murphy's cousin, the law of averages. And the law of averages says if you work hard enough, long enough, doing the right things, it has to come to fruition for you. There's no other option. It doesn't matter. Now, you may have to change your approach, even as a pilot. If I take off and I try to fly from point A to point B, I'll never make it. Logically, you think if I plan to go, because, for example, I'm near Detroit, Michigan. If I want to go to Chicago, I just draw a line and I go. And that's not how the world works. Not only is the world spinning, there's wind up there that's going to push you around. There's what they call isogonic lines that are lines of magnetics that'll screw around with your equipment and make you think you're going in a direction that you're not really going. And if you don't make corrections, then you won't end up in Chicago. You'll end up off course somewhere else. And it may only seem like an eighth of an inch that you're off, but you keep flying that eighth of an inch over time and it opens out and becomes a real big problem for you, especially when you're planning fuel. But if you take that and look at it in life, and someone puts this label on you, I say you challenge that label. Great, that's your opinion. And even if it's in secret, go try something. Go read that book. I got to the point where I figured out that I could read faster if I, thank God again for technology, but like Audible and things that are, if I read the book and hear it audibly while I'm going over the page, I can get it to sink in faster. It still takes time, but the best things do. And then nobody can take that from me. One of the best things that ever happened, and it's really, Johnny, about the unintended effects. There's a feeling that you get, I don't know if you ever had this happen to you, where you've made a decision or you've done something or decided you were going to do something and you found out that you inspired somebody else to do something. Because people are always watching and only in a good way. They're looking to see, are they really going to accomplish this? And I found out when I graduated from college, I had a resource room teacher that, man, she was just wonderful. Her name was Deborah Hessler. And she put a lot of time into me through grade school and to try to get me on the right track because I was labeled learning disabled in the first grade. Almost failed the first grade. That's how they figured it out. But I was able to track her down and I invited her to my college graduation. I never forgot the time she spent. And the other thing that goes along with that is I have an innate belief that when people give you their time, they're giving you their most valuable possession because they can't go buy it back. So if they've given that to you, you kind of have a duty to them to go be and do everything you possibly can be, or you're letting them down as well as yourself because they saw something in you. And that's what you need to focus on. What did they see in me that they gave me their time that they can't get back? And so I called her and I sent tickets to her and her husband to come out to go to my graduation. We're standing in the hallway after I graduated and she's crying and she says to me, she said, you'll never believe when I got your tickets in the mail. What I didn't know was secretly going on was the school was trying to cut budget. And she was having to go to monthly meetings and argue on behalf of people like me that needed these resource rooms to help get through school. And so she was able to she tracked down, I think it was the head of the board that was trying to cut these budgets and said, I guess in one of the meetings, quite honestly told her that we were all a waste of time. These kids aren't going anywhere. We have their test scores. This is a draw on a budget that we don't need to spend. And she was able to call them and tell them, those kids that were a waste of time, I'm about to go to the graduation of one from the University of Michigan.
Wow.
And so I had no idea those battles were being fought on my behalf without my knowledge. Now, what if I wouldn't have gone and done that? What if I didn't give her that opportunity to have her moment to shine?
It's easy to be caught in our heads and our own labels, but actually the impact we can be creating on someone else by just making that decision. And it comes down to the decision, and it's really empowering, the kind of vibe you're giving off here. It's easy to just say, okay, I'm stuck with this and that's what I am. But it's a little bit harder to decide, no, I'm not this, and then live a different way. And you're inspiring other people by doing that. And it's had that knock-on effect. So yeah, I think that's even a realization for me. Sometimes you might unintentionally do something and then some, or unintentionally inspire someone from something you've done. So
Exactly.
absolutely, yeah. I wanted to touch on a little bit, Gene, as well. Like you've done that, you went to college, you had this, you've inspired this teacher, and then you've done all these things like these businesses. You decided there was potential, like you were going to be a social worker at one point, and there was potential that you might be in 9 to 5, but you didn't. It's from what I'm kind of gathering from your story is there was a lot of action taken, and then a lot of like tough decisions to do things, or maybe they weren't tough decisions, but decisions to do things. And a lot of times, a lot of us can be caught in our head and being a little bit fearful about doing things that scare us. For you, did that come up at all, like the fear of like the unknown or the fear of doing something? And if it did, how did you work through that?
When I was younger, I cried a lot. I'm not going to lie to you. There's always fear of the
Mm,
unknown, right? Everybody wants certainty and they want that security.
mm,
And at one point, I can tell you, as a young man, I was sleeping in a rest area in my car with my pet dog, little 6 pound Maltese dog. I had nowhere to go. And I look back on that now and I think, my goodness, I can't, but you look at it now and I don't think anybody would want to sleep in a rest area. But we were talking back in the 90s when, things were a little bit different than they are now. But I thought, no, there's got to be something better for me. There's no way I was put on this earth just to be a 9 to 5 and pay taxes and die. There's got to be more to this. And I don't even know where I picked it up, quite honestly. I used to listen, and I still do, to Les Brown.
mm,
And he talked a lot about how important your time was because you can't get it back. You can't. And I've said to people often, well, point out what store I can go to and buy back a day of my life. And there's no place to get it once it's gone. I joke with people all the time. It's like how people say, well, on the weekend, I'll catch up on sleep. No, you won't. There's no catching up. Once it's gone, what you've done now is slept away more of your time. You don't really catch up on it. And in making the decisions I made, it was just, well, this didn't work. So let me go work over here for a little while, or let me go try this, or let me go look at this and see if I can get this to work. And so I kept just moving forward. If something didn't work out, I would go try something else. If I had an instructor that I didn't see eye to eye with, or I wasn't picking up what they're laying down, I would go see if I could get transferred to a different class. And I didn't accept the standard. In our minds, people say when you ask somebody, how are you doing? The typical answer, and I'm sure you get it on your podcast, I'm doing okay.
mm,
But as compared to what? Where did we get the standard of okay? Because, and I'm sure you know, Johnny, in our mind's eye, we all have a standard. We all know what okay looks like in our mind's eye. And when I looked around at my circumstances and found out they're not okay to my standard, not to, there's the old acronym of keeping up with the Joneses, right? I don't know who the Joneses are. I don't know how they became the standard, and I don't want what they want. I want what I want. And so, yeah, when you look around, I heard a guy say one time, people that look around for the circumstances they want, if they don't find them, they create them.
mm.
And you'd be amazed at how often, and it's hard for humans to do because of fear, like you brought up, ask for help. Ask for help. You'd be amazed at how much people were not. And if you're not that great at doing it, go to a public place. I mean, I know malls aren't really a big thing anymore, but there are still places where people gather. And I got used to asking for help by walking up to people and asking for directions. Just the approach of approaching to people, right? If I'm lost, I'm going to ask somebody how to get somewhere, right? And so I got used to just that. Well, how do you get to this place, or how do you get to? And you'd be amazed. There was never one person that said, "Leave me alone. I'm not going to help you." And it carries into other things, especially if it's people that you know. And sometimes, when you see life big, you can't just tell somebody how big life is. You have to sometimes take them and show them how big life is. And then they get excited about it and get turned on fire for it too and want to help you.
Mm.
I've had projects I've worked on that just by asking for help, in particular, I wanted to build a part for a car company that was defunct. And I found out they were still in business, and I pitched them an idea of doing apparel for them and got my foot in the door. My real goal was to build these parts, and I pitched that to them, and they gave me the rights to pursue it. I had no idea how to build these parts. I just had an idea in my head of what it should look like, and it didn't look right to me on the car. And so I went and I literally Googled for companies that build car parts. And the third company answered the phone. And I told the guy what I was doing. And he immediately wanted me to come and have a meeting with him. And so I drove, it was like a 3 hour ride to go to this company. This guy got so excited, he went out in the shop and made everybody stop their jobs and come into the conference room to hear what we were going to be working, because he was already sold. He wanted to do this with me. And maybe it was just from my passion of what I wanted this to be, how much better this could be if we fix this. And it wasn't really a problem for anybody. It was just something I wanted to do. But at the end of the day, that was 10 years ago, 12 years ago, and we're still doing it. We're still making parts. We're still being asked to modify them in certain ways. It's amazing. I had no idea I'd do any of that. I didn't know how I was going to do it when they told me, yeah, go, we want to see what you got. I had a rough drawing on paper that was really a bad drawing. I'm not much of an artist. So it was not anything fantastic that I could show them, but I just wanted to go try that. Maybe I could do it. And maybe I fail miserably. And so what? I was in Toastmasters for a while, and I still am. I shouldn't say for a while because I still am. And the way I got in, I went to their website one night and just started clicking on Zoom links that were near my area. And one of them worked. That's how I got, and I basically photobombed their meeting because everybody was like, well, who's this guy? How did he get in here? Is he a friend of somebody's? And then they had to ask me, and I had to tell them, no, I just started clicking on links inside the website, ended up here. But you got to take that chance. I mean, and it was funny because they said, well, are you willing to participate in the club tonight? I said, well, yeah. They said, will you answer a question? I said, sure. And they said, well, you don't mind? I said, no, because if it goes wrong, I'll just end the meeting and leave, and I'll never see none of you again. It didn't really matter. And you got to look at life that way. What's the worst that happens if I don't get it? If I don't get it, great, I don't get it. But what if I get it? What if I figure it out? And that's the thought that always toyed with me. What if I do get it? How much better will my life be? How much better will the lives of others be? Because I took that chance.
Looking at it, because we can easily run from or look at the painful direction of like, oh, what's going to go wrong? But actually, what you've been talking about here is framing it for the best possible. And actually, like you say, the worst case scenario, like leaving the Zoom in Toastmasters or something else, is the worst case. Yeah, I've been in Toastmasters as well, like in person and Zoom. So yeah, that's very true. So I love that. I love what you said about asking for help as well, and that can be quite scary to people as well, right? But I like just exercising the muscle, like your example of going to the mall and asking people for directions as a practice. It's that decision to get out there and then start asking. Gene, I just wanted to ask you because there's always this comment. You're a man who's doing multiple things. Got these businesses. Very in demand as well as a speaker. Like, how do you manage your time without being overwhelmed? Because a lot of people these days, we're all like running out of time. Everything's manic. I just wondered from you, what do you do to decide on your priorities and manage your time effectively?
What a wonderful question. If I'm being totally honest, my schedule is normally chaos because I have these businesses and because I have these things. I get, hey, something over here in this company becomes an emergency. I think before we were on this call today, I probably put out 4 fires in 2 different companies of things and I look at them and I think, I've had a buddy say to me that we often see things as problems, but they're really, he calls them problematunities.
Ooh,
That
I've heard that word.
there's probably an opportunity there if you look close enough. And so that's what I do with them is I try to tell them, well, okay, this might seem like a problem. How do we solve it? I've made a bit of a career asking people, if you're going to bring me your problem, I'm okay with it.
Mm.
I'll figure it out. Because whatever it is, and I've told myself that, I actually often tell well, I'll figure this. Whatever it is, I'll figure it out.
Mm.
And you have to treat that problem or those challenges as if they're really not a big deal, no
Mm.
matter how big they are. I heard a guy say one time, you must treat success and failure. You have to treat those two imposters exactly the same. Because anybody that's ever done anything, you get a goal, right? You set a goal and you go get it. And how long does that euphoria last?
A day
Uh,
or so,
yeah.
however, yeah.
You ever gotten a new car, for example, right?
Mm.
Within a week, that's my car,
Mm.
right? It's gone now. And then you kind of think, eh, that's all there is. That's it. And for the most part, yeah. And what you don't realize is the chase, the challenge of it is what you really fell in love with. And if
Mm.
you'll pick something else, you'll go fall in love with it. And that same feeling will come back. But to your question, you're right. People are afraid to ask for help. In particular, I find men are afraid to ask for help. There are some ladies out there that, there's this stigmatism in our society that women should have stayed in the home, and it's not that way. We've got women worldwide leaders and leaders of countries now that have been done some ingenious things.
Mm.
And we've got some that, we think, well, maybe they shouldn't have made that decision. But even had it been a man there, they might have made the same decision. Who's to say which one? I'm sure you remember comedian Robin Williams. I always loved his
Mm.
analogy that there should be a woman president in every country, because a woman president would never make a bomb that kills you. She'll make a bomb that makes you feel bad for a while, but she'll never make one that kills you. And I have to agree with them. They don't really want to hurt people, but men in particular don't like to ask for help. Women in our society have kind of been groomed and trained that they should ask for help when they need help.
Mm.
And even now I see more and more some ladies they don't like to ask for help. They don't want to have a label put on them of, well, you couldn't handle this, or you're inept at this, or, maybe someone tells them that they're stupid or they don't know their job or whatever the case may be. And it's not true. We all have little things that we're not perfect. I mean, everybody can't be great at everything.
Mm.
You can get to a level where you're comfortable at doing something, but if you try to stretch yourself and grow a little more, you'll find that you don't know as much as you thought you knew. And to ask for help, it's not saying that I'm weak or that I can't handle this. It's saying that I probably have a lot going on, and if I could have somebody come help me, it'd be fantastic. It'd be fantastic for somebody to help me, support me, and help me get through this problem.
Mm.
Maybe look at it. I mean, there's a saying that Les Brown says all the time, you can't see the picture when you're in the frame. And it's true. You can't read the label when you're in the box.
Mm.
And sometimes you need somebody to look at it different and go, oh, well, go do this. I find that, one of my best guys that work for me at the airport often tells me, he's like, that's why I like coming to you. You look at stuff from a different angle that I didn't really look at. And he tells me, like, I hate to, every time I hate to bother you with this, or I'm not trying to put more on you. And I look at it and think, what new challenge do we have today? That's how when he comes to me, I always know it's some new challenge. And it's not that he is not smart to figure it out. I guess if I left him alone with it long enough, but that's a business where we're trying to repair people's aircrafts and get them back to them. And so he's not afraid to come ask for help. And I have a lot of respect for him for that, because he is an extremely smart individual. He knows way more than I know about how
Mm.
airplanes work and how they run. I'm kind of like I'll go fly them and somebody else can build them and do all the technical stuff with them. I'll just go fly them and have fun. But you should never be afraid to ask for help. I think it's a sign of weakness if you don't and you need it. Why you
Mm.
let your ego get in the way? Because
Mm.
your ego will do you more damage than anything else.
I'd agree. Absolutely. Yeah. The power of asking for help. And sometimes just like I've been in those situations, it's like in my career in business, and it's like you talk to someone like and manage being worried about the judgment sometimes. It's like, oh, what if I appear this way? And then you speak to the manager and like, now it's helped me think clearly and I've got the idea. And it's just the beauty of like even two minds sometimes. So I really like that point. That's a really powerful one, I think, to end with, Gene. Just as we like wrap up today, I
Yeah.
wondered if you got any final point that you wanted to share, or maybe re-emphasized from what you've shared today, and also where can the listener find you if they want to get in touch, they want to find out about what you're doing, because I know you're out there sharing your message to plenty of people.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to almost at any time, if I have the time to do it, I'll talk to anybody. If people reach out to me and I don't get back to somebody immediately, just know that you are on the radar to be gotten back in touch with. But I can be reached through Instagram, through Twitter. Well, I guess it's X now, Facebook. My email address is therealgene01@gmail.com if people want to reach me that way. Um, I'll tell you the book to Over My Shoulder, Find Your Passion, Live the Dream, was the first book I wrote. That book started as a about 300 to 400 page book. It was around 370 pages, 67 pages. And I
Mm.
would read back through it and then I would start chopping things out of it because I thought if somebody picks up this book that's like me, are they going to want to read 367 pages? And I kept cutting it down and I thought, no, you need to be giving real life examples of real things that happen to people, of real things that you've experienced and how you got through that, because that's what people want. They want you to get to the point. They don't want to. And I finally chopped this book down. I think the final cut, I want to say it's right around 117 pages. So I cut it down to exactly what I thought people would need to move forward. And I tried to write it so that it was like you and me talking today. It's written as if it's a conversation. So it would be an easy read. And that being said, one of the things I would tell you is whatever your passion is, and I don't care what it is. There are people like Matt that works for me. His passion is for airplanes. He loves to work on them and tinker with them and create new things for them. And he's very fortunate. He got a job in that field and he's fantastic at it. Pursue your passion, whether it's writing your book, writing a song, singing a song. I mean, I know people say, well, studio time's expensive. I got a fella here not too far from me. He put a studio in his basement. I think he charges like $20 an hour for studio time. There are people, I mean, if you look around and you ask for help, you'll find it.
Hmm.
And the thing is, if you just start heading in the direction toward whatever you want to do, whatever you're seeking is seeking you because you're the only one that can deliver on it. It wasn't given to anybody else. It was given to you. And if you don't go do it, all of us suffer. And I
Mm.
think that's the most important thing to tell people. You don't want to go to your grave with permanent potential.
Mm. Mm. Very powerful point to end on, Gene. So I think, yeah, like reflecting on, like, actually, we're really, really busy, but there's always time for the passion, what you want to do. So making that time for it, and whatever it is to you, it's personal to you. So that's a really great point to end with. So I want to thank you, Gene, for coming on today once again.
Absolutely. I was glad to be here today, Johnny.
Awesome. So that concludes our episode for today. And remember to lead with your heart and not with fear.